Alright, so you're welcome back to today's tutorial. We shall be looking at photosynthesis. It's a very important thing in our universe because it is the primary source of energy. You have some bacteria that can do this, which we know as cyanobacteria. We also have some other organisms like the Spirogyra and the rest of them that can photosynthesize. But today we shall be looking at photosynthesis from the aspect of the plants, because the plants also contain this special organelle called the chloroplast. So the chloroplast contains a pigment which is very important in photosynthesis. This pigment helps to trap the sun's energy and then utilize it to carry out photosynthesis, and this pigment is known as the chlorophyll. So the chlorophyll, which is present in the chloroplast, helps or aids in photosynthesis. But first of all, let us start with definition of photosynthesis. It is a biological process by which green plants manufacture their own food, leveraging carbon dioxide and water, and in the presence of what? Sunlight. So the sunlight is the primary source of energy for what? Photosynthesis. And every living thing, like I earlier mentioned, that depends directly or indirectly on plants. So if you are eating your vegetables, you are feeding directly on the plants, and if you are feeding or eating a herbivore that have fed on a plant, that means you are depending on it also indirectly. So plants are a major source of our food, even as humans, and that's why it is important that we learn photosynthesis. So this is basically the chemical formula for photosynthesis. We have the sunlight here, and we have also the chlorophyll. Good. Now, the sunlight and the chlorophyll are very important in photosynthesis, including carbon dioxide and water. So obviously carbon dioxide is from the atmosphere, so it diffuses from the atmosphere and enters into the plant via the stomata process. We have glucose or starch produced for us here, and then also we have oxygen released as a byproduct. Remember, that's why it is always advised to have trees or plants around you, because they always purify the environment by giving off oxygen that we need and then removing from the environment carbon dioxide. All right, so this is basically it about photosynthesis. And here we'll be looking at some requirements for photosynthesis to take place. That is, certain things that must be there for photosynthesis to accurately occur. So we have the first one we'll be looking at is carbon dioxide. All right, carbon dioxide is down here. Now, carbon dioxide is needed because it forms the carbon structure of the formation of the glucose and the rest of the materials that shall be produced at the end of the chemical reactions and biological processes within the plants during photosynthesis. And we also have the temperature, and remember here we mentioned optimum temperature. So the optimum temperature here, optimum is actually an English word, which simply means, some people refer to as perfect or just the right temperature. It is needed for certain enzymes which participate in this process to actually perform at their best levels. So optimum temperature is very, very important. Then we have the third one, which is water and mineral salts, which we have earlier explained, especially when we'll come to see during the light reaction stage, or the light reaction or stage of photosynthesis. We shall see what we call photolysis, that is splitting of water. They are very important during photosynthesis. Then we have the chlorophyll, which is the core pigment in green plants, which helps to trap the sun's energy and then enables it to carry out further reactions like photolysis, which is splitting of water. So without the chlorophyll, the sun's energy cannot be effectively utilized. And then finally we have sunlight, obviously, because without light there can't be any form of photosynthesis in any green organism that can photosynthesize. So the primary source of energy for photosynthesis is the sunlight. All right, so this is basically what happens in the chloroplast of a green plant. All right, it shows us two stages here: the grana, which is happening, that's the grana is the location where the light energy happens, light reaction happens, and then the stroma is the location within the chloroplast where the dark stage or dark reaction happens. But we're going to explain this. All right, so if you look here, we have what we call the thylakoids or the grana. Now, each individual disc that can be found here are referred to as thylakoids, but when they are in piles in this nature, they are referred to as the grana. So these are the locations for the light reaction or light dependent reaction. They are called this because they happen in the presence of sunlight. Then for the dark stage, which happens at the stroma of the chloroplast. Now, the stroma is the outer liquid part where you can find the grana or the thylakoids. All right, so outside is the stroma. This is where the light independent or dark stage reaction takes place. And from the diagram we can see here, we can see the sunlight being introduced here, and obviously we can see the direction of water coming in, CO2 being taken in, and then under here we see the direction of oxygen and glucose in this case, or sugar. Then we have ATP and NADPH. Also, you can refer to the dark stage as the Calvin cycle. All right, but we are going to take them individually now to see what happens in each of these stages. So first of all, we'll be looking at the light stage. Okay, so this, like I said, individually is referred to as the thylakoid, but as a pile, they are referred to as the grana. So when the light comes in, every light dependent reaction happens within the grana. So obviously, light dependent reactions happen in a location as the grana, like I repeatedly mentioned, and it happens during the daytime or in the presence of sunlight. So what are the mechanisms here? Sunlight excites the chlorophyll electrons, then thereby trapping energy for photolysis. Now, if you divide this word into two, we have the photo and we have the lysis. So it simply means splitting using what? Light. So water is split into two here, and then we have hydrogen ion and hydroxide ion. Now, this hydroxide ion is further converted to water and oxygen, while oxygen will now be what? Given off. So if you notice here, we have mentioned two important things that happen during the light stage. Photolysis, that is splitting of water, which enables us to further convert it to water and then remove oxygen in the process. So oxygen is released to the environment during the light stage reaction or the light dependent stage reaction. Good. Now, in this case, also within the light stage reaction, we have oxygen is given out as byproduct like earlier mentioned, and then NADP is reduced to NADPH, and also ATP is formed. Now, ATP is the energy currency of a biological being, right? So it is the form of energy that the body uses. So we have oxygen removed there, and then we also have NADP reduced to NADPH, and then we also have ATP. All right, so these are the major occurrences or the major reactions that take place in the light stage of the photosynthesis. First, we have photolysis or photolysis. Then secondly, we have removal of oxygen as a byproduct, and then we have reduction of NADP to NADPH and ATP. Now, this provides the energy source. The NADPH and the ATP provides the energy source that shall be used during the dark stage. So we now go over to the dark stage to see what happens. Now, during the dark stage, or what some people refer to as the Calvin cycle, it is a lot more complex that we will discuss here, but we just discuss the basics. Now, the first thing is that the location is obviously within the stroma. So it happens in the stroma of the chloroplast. Remember, we mentioned that the stroma is the outer part of the chloroplast, the outer liquid part of the chloroplast. and it happens at night times or in the absence of dark in the absence of light. That's why it's called the dark reaction stage. And it uses the ATP and the reduced NADP from the light stage, and in this case assimilates carbon 4 oxide, that takes in carbon 4 oxide. So assimilation of carbon 4 oxide happens during the dark stage. And also using the controlled enzymes, at the end of the day there is formation of a carbon structure from which glucose and other materials can be produced. So the yield here, like we mentioned here, it forms 3-carbon compound, that is CH2O, which serves as the base carbon structure from which simple sugars, fats, oil, and proteins are built. So these are the major reaction stages or the mechanisms of photosynthesis. Now let's quickly recap the things or the important events that happen during the reaction stages of photosynthesis. The first one is during the light stage, we have one, photolysis, that is splitting of water, and then we also have second one, release of oxygen. The third one, reduction of NADP to NADPH, and also production of ATP. Now, NADPH and ATP is now the energy source that will now be transferred into the dark stage, and the dark stage happens within the stroma and in the absence of light, and using this they produce or they assimilate or take in carbon 4 oxide, and thereby forming a carbon structure that can be used or that can serve as a formation for other materials such as simple sugars, fats and oil, proteins, etc. So these are the basic ideas about photosynthesis, and I hope you've picked it up. In our next class, we shall be discussing the experiments in photosynthesis. Remember, we mentioned that there are some certain factors that are important for photosynthesis to take place. So we shall be testing if truly they hold true. We shall be looking at sunlight, carbon dioxide, chlorophyll, and the rest of them to know if truly they are important during photosynthesis. Thank you, and I'll see you in my next class.